Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, we're going to date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 26, or in legacy numbers, blog number 182. And it's dated 17th of August 2025. And it's been a beautiful week, weather-wise. But personally, it's been one of the bleakest weeks I've ever had. But let's move on, shall we, with just the news, just to date stamp this, get this out of the way. And we'll talk about the war, which we've done since the very start of my blog. It's just the Ukraine-Russian conflict. I'll try and read my notes as best as possible. So it starts off, European leader to join Zelensky for the Trump meeting after Putin asks for Donbas surrender. This is expected to be the Finnish President Alexander Stubb. The meeting is to be had in the White House on Monday. On Friday, Putin stated he wanted Ukraine to surrender Donetsk and Luhansk regions as a condition to end the war. Meanwhile, Russians have tried to advance into the Sumy front, but were repelled by Ukraine, and they gained 1.2 miles of territory. Yeah, so there was this big meeting between Putin and Trump on Friday. 3 hours of talks with no result. But speculation was that Trump was bending. After that, a meeting has been arranged with Zelensky and Trump at the White House, for which a European representation is going to be there. All while this is going on, Russia is continuing to push forward something that Trump says he wants to stop. So why he's bending, I don't know. But that's the war news in a nutshell. They speculated on Friday that this was not going to work. Trump, Putin talking by themselves in Alaska. I suppose give it a try, but as far as I'm concerned, the way you get a ceasefire is to have all three representations there around the table. You don't ask for one side, not the other. But I said all that last week, so nothing else to add. Haven't really listened much to the news because of stuff that's been going on in my life, but what I've got for the UK is most of the country, business, sport sections, etc., did participate with the 2-minute silence on Friday to mark VJ Day. That's Victory Over Japan Day. It's the mark of the end of the Second World War. And I must admit, it was all over our intranet that the 2-minute was at 12 o'clock. I did also do my silence at 12 o'clock. Actually, a countdown clock came on my PC to it, so it was quite important to the business sector that I work in. Happy to do that. Other news, a sonic boom was heard over most of the east and southeast of the country on Saturday as jets were sent to investigate the issue. Ended up being a private jet for which they managed to help land at the Air Force base. There was no problems. It had lost communication with base operations. Must have been bloody hell, it was flying fast, beat the sound barrier, although there are many reasons and time scales on the sound barrier depending on where you are in the sky, how high up you are. But still, sonic booms. Now, we've had a few over, close to where I'm at over the years. And it's always like, wow, what's that clap? Jesus, because it's almost like a thunderclap. So yeah, always sort of like exciting when that happens. And the rest is all sort of financial, really, all doom and gloom. I've been talking about the high street for the last couple of weeks, but there have been more store closure announcements, this time at Hobbycraft and the Entertainer Toy Store, all announcing further closures, with Poundland also adding to its tally, which it added to last week. There are more store closures for Poundland. I think Poundland's numbers, sort of days are numbered, to be quite honest. Used to be a hive of activity, Poundland. I won't buy £6 batteries. I'll go and buy a pack from Poundland. That'll do me. They were crap. We knew they were crap. But it was one way of saving some money and just keeping things going for a bit, even if the batteries only lasted a day or didn't work at all when you took them out of the packet. It cost you £1, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So we usually draw my attention to me, and it's been a very sad week for me. I haven't written any notes down because it's pretty much in my memory at the moment. And what happened was I wanted the GP surgery to take me more seriously in regards to my sleep disorders. Now, I've never known whether I've got sleep apnea. It's been a guess for many years. But if you remember rightly, I filled in a form 2 to 3 years ago and nothing happened. And after I had my heart attack, the surgeon and the GP did not consider the sleep problems to be anything other than stress, etc., and my normal condition that I've had for years and years and years. But with the change of circumstances with my mum and the amount of hours I'm working, fatigue has now started to become a thing. So I was expecting to go in there to be referred again to the sleep clinic, and for the doctor to give me some advice on how to relax, sleep disorder type things. So I went in there, explained to him that, looking at monitors is the thing that makes me sleepy more than anything. If I have a really, really bad night and my mum's been pressing the button to call me in, if I look at the screens for a period of time, 2, 3 or so hours, then basically I tend to find that the screens go a bit double. If I'm in meetings where I've got no control and I'm there just listening, I start to droop. But I've never had a problem driving. Through all my sleep disorders, I used to drive around the country all the time, never got sleepy, had the air conditioning on, listening to some music. It was almost like adrenaline kept me going. And so I, when he actually asked me the questions like, do you wake up in the night gasping for breath? Well, that's never happened. Even when I had my heart attack, I was just hot and sweaty and a pain in my chest. I wasn't gasping for breath. I must admit, every time I wake up, I go to the toilet. That's me getting old. So he asked that question. And there was a couple of other questions, but they were all based around changes in circumstances, for which I did tell him. I said, since May, I'm working very, very long hours. I'm not getting much time to myself. Things are on my mind. It's making it difficult to sleep. But then I wake up a lot, and then it's back round to the next day, and until there comes a point where I can actually get some sleep, which is very rare, and the best time is usually Saturday morning or Sunday morning, where my sister will turn up later because of the bus schedule. That's generally when I get caught up, but it takes time for that. So we got to the end, and he said, I'm going to put you for some blood tests. Great, fantastic. and put you through to the sleep clinic and try and expedite it. That's brilliant, fantastic, couldn't ask for anything more. Then he said, but there is a legal requirement that I have to now ask you to speak to the DVLA. I went, DVLA, why? I've told you I don't feel sleepy at the wheel. He said, legal requirement. Anybody that's had fatigue over a certain period of time needs to speak to the DVLA. And I said, well, they're going to revoke my license. I said, this will make things difficult for my mum. And they said, well, they shouldn't do. I can't tell you whether they would or not. But the way that he expressed it was, if I didn't do it, there's £1,000 fine and possible, hurt to whoever I might crash into. But secondly, the legal requirement is that you have to do it. But apparently, they call you and ask you some more pertinent questions before they revoke your license. So I was happy to do it because of that. So I left the room and I went downstairs and went online and filled the form in. And it only asked 5 questions. And 2 of the questions were, do you have a problem sleeping? Yes. And the other one was, is it controlled? Well, no, not at the moment, because I've just been to the doctor's. He hasn't done anything other than put me through to a sleep clinic in the future. And it instantly said, you're under advisement that you may well be revoked. While we're making that decision, we are happy for you to drive, but please drive carefully until you receive an email or letter where the physical answer will come through, and it may well be that you're revoked. So of course I got very nervous about this, and I walked home and I phoned up the DVLA and I expressed my concern for it. I said, look, I'm a carer for my mum. I've told him I don't have sleep apnea. I don't wake up hard of breath or anything like that. And I think that he's jumped the gun a little bit. And the person at the end of the phone did use empathy. I mean, he said, yeah, it seems that way. But because the form is in, we have to legally go through with it. But what I will do is I'll put the notes that you've just told me about everything that went on at that doctor's surgery. Maybe it will help. And I said, okay. But I was sick all that afternoon. And I couldn't get to sleep, and I was sick all night. My throat was red raw on Wednesday. I could hardly talk. Took a long time for that to come back. It took all morning, to be quite honest. And I decided I'd phone the doctor's surgery for an on-the-day appointment for 2 folds. One, I've been sick, and my blood pressure was sky high again. And 2, to possibly discuss what had happened the day before with the DVLA and the GP. And I speak to Louise Shen, I think her name is, or Shin, something like that. And she used empathy as well, said, totally get it. I think the doctor may have jumped the gun, but she was no legal person. But what she did say is that from what she understood of it as well, is that they do contact the GP surgery. This is the DVLA. And she might have some power when that happens to fight my case, especially with how long it's going to take to get the blood works back and to be referred to a sleep clinic, and my situation with my mum. So I left sort of like feeling a little bit happier, a light at the end of the tunnel. But I'd already put in a complaint to the doctor's surgery before I'd actually spoken to this doctor. So the next day, Wednesday, the complaint came back saying, totally understand how you're feeling. We hate it when people have to complain. However, in this particular instance, the doctor is on holiday. Oh, great. That's nice, isn't it? But does all this problems and buggers off on holiday. And we can't, therefore, have a word with him to say what was said. But it's quite true, you can drive your car. And the DVLA will be the people that will contact us, probably for advice on you before revoking. So that might be some good news. And you might need to also speak to a higher up at the doctor's surgery. and would I like her to arrange that? I said yes. And the next one that came through for the GP surgery was that the doctor that I need to speak to wouldn't be until the 28th of August, for which I just turned around and said, well, that's very late. You can understand where I'm coming from. I'm probably going to have my license revoked, and you're saying 28th of August, and I'm under threat every day of waiting for this email or letter to come through. And, you know, it's going to be too far gone. I mean, how am I supposed to look after my mum? Didn't get a reply back to that. But I thought to myself, look, the revoking hasn't happened yet. Of course, on Saturday, the letter came through and it says you're revoked. So again, all this information, the GP saying that the DVLA were going to call me was a lie. The fact that the DVLA are going to contact the doctor's surgery, a lie, because they revoked it without asking, and if they'd have actually asked, they'd have known that this was a dispute all this week since Tuesday. So, who do you believe? And to be quite honest, it's now made things worse. I'm sleeping even worse than I was before. Stuff all the things I had planned. I've got a 2-week holiday coming up. I was going to go to see a friend on the Saturday, which is now under threat because I've got no way of getting there. All of this sort of stuff just makes you feel awful. And so the only really good point that happened this week was me doing my live with Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And we had a nice little chat. And to be quite honest, if that wasn't there, I don't know what I'd do. It was a great time. And if you haven't subscribed to Ian, I recommend that you do. There's always a description and a link to friends who I feel have got great channels and that you might get a benefit from. But we talked about films, TV, pros and cons of specific films, ones we're looking forward to seeing this year, ones that have been out for a long time we might not know about, etc., etc. So that was great. And that's really the news. There isn't much else to talk about. I am going to move on shortly to the shoutouts, but I'm just going to top my glass. So won't be a moment. Back in a second. So on top of my issues with all of that, and you can imagine how bleak and how sick I'm feeling about it all, the PC's getting a little bit worse. It was going quite well for a couple of weeks. I thought I'd solved the problem with something called Display Driver Uninstaller. It's an amazing little product that basically we've had for years, but people don't use very often. And that is to remove your whole graphic drivers and remove the registry entries, clear all the cache, etc., etc. And when you restart, it installs the Windows display driver, and then you can choose which version of the display drivers you want to write over the top. Now, it's also got a button there called delete shader cache. And what I got into the habit of doing over the last 2 weeks was not deleting the drivers all the time, although that did help an awful lot. Deleting the display driver cache and then it booting up the next time seemed to fix the problem with 100% usage on the drives meter. But it's returned now. Every time I boot up, the drives meter's at 100%. And this is with sysmain disabled, external caching disabled for external devices, indexing switched off, the AHCPI bug switched off on the 2 SATA controllers. I'm going a bit technical now, but I'm pretty adept at the things that run in the background that could be causing the problem, and it's not helping now. And I believe it's because it's actually to do with power. It's actually to do with the fact that something on the motherboard's not controlling the power very well, and it loses connection with the SSD drive, slowing it all down, and it having to seek all the time is probably what the issue is, and that means new PC. And as anybody knows, over the last 5 months, with my mum being ill, my savings have depleted to the point where it's very difficult for me to buy quite an expensive motherboard and chip and so forth to future-proof me. But I do have my i9 laptop, which I could use, but it would mean each time me having to disconnect from the main PC to this laptop to do a blog and then put it all back because I capture and all my games and etc. are on this other PC. So it's a lot of backwards and forwards, even with the hubs and so forth that I've got. So that's been happening. And apart from me chatting on a Wednesday, which is really the best thing that ever happens to me, I haven't had time, or should I say my friends haven't had time to call me to find out how I am. I was expecting a call from a friend on Thursday. That didn't happen. I managed to call one of my friends on Monday, but it was only for 20 minutes before I had to deal with my mother. And so I'm becoming more and more isolated, and probably more and more mood swing towards darkness than I am light. And everything just seems like, what's the point to me at the moment? There's no wife or girlfriend or kiddie for me to think about. And once my mother's gone, I'll be alone. And everything I seem to live for is just to pay money to keep myself and my mother alive. I really, if I lost this house, which is a very big possibility, then basically there's really nothing for me. But I've always said that I'm not a defeatist. I will continue to keep fighting. And doing this blog sort of helps because it's a sort of a vent, if you see what I mean, at the camera. Hello, camera, I'm venting at you. Like that, really. And, it's just how it is. I mean, yesterday when my sister left at 2:30, my mum wanted the toilet every 40 minutes, 5 times. I had to carry the toilet into the room. When she'd finished with it, empty it and put it back. Do that 5 times, 5 pads, 5 bags, 5 lots of toilet paper, 5 times closing and opening the curtains, 5 times bringing the toilet and 5 times taking it back. And the wait, while your mother needs to, do her thing on the toilet, plus getting her meal, plus getting my meal, plus, at the end of the day, my sister turned up at 9 o'clock and I hadn't had 10 minutes to myself. And this is where I was talking about that fatigue. This is where the sleep is a problem. But anyway, let's get to the shout-out, shall we? A lot of nice things. And just want to say thanks to all of these people. If I've missed anybody, they're going to be in the comments bit. So let's get crack-a-lacking. We've got Denny, Carl Todd, Robert's Retro Gaming, Wee Bob Art, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Martroid, Colin Jones, and someone called Ross C6E. And one thing I've noticed that I haven't done before this is just sign in to all those comments, because I've written them down here as the names to shout out, but it just goes to show you that I don't know the comments. So I'm going to just pause the recording while I open up my YouTube account and get to the point where everything's expanded. So won't be a moment. There we are. That didn't take too long. I just had to open up the browser and basically expand all of the comments. Took 2 minutes. And of course, these are not in any particular order, but it just goes to prove that, I read these out verbatim as they turn up. So, the first one in the list is Denny, and it's got, "Hiya mate. Enjoyed your live stream Friday night. A nice variety of games. Great to catch Steve and Mark in there." Yeah, I was so pissed off on Friday that I did a live stream. Partially it was because Steve had done a stream about an hour before, and I'd bought him a little game, 72 pence. Very, very small, very cheap. And I wanted to know how it was, and he said he was having trouble understanding, well, not understanding, but getting anywhere in the game. He said he was absolutely hopeless at it, which I find difficult to believe, because it's very simple twin-stick shooter. So I put that on, and I played. There's a lady that comes in into Ian Hill the Ramblings room called Sandra, and she wanted me to play Dandy at some point. Now, I'd never heard of this game, Dandy. It's on the Atari. So I'd loaded that up and I put it on. It's like Gauntlet, but actually it's really quite a cut down version. It's almost like it was before Gauntlet was out. I think it's very close to when Gauntlet was out. It's a 1983 game anyway. And I was really enjoying myself. We were all trying to work out what the controls were. Steve coming to the rescue at that time and told me what key it was to press for food. But yeah, had a bit of a ball of playing that one. And then I tried to play a game that Mainmeister gave to me, but at that point I'd been streaming for about an hour and a half. My eyes were going a bit skewy, and it was 11:45 at night. So it was time to go to bed. So I got a little way into that game. It's definitely a Vampire Survivors game. I could have been there for quite some time. The first game I ever played on it, by the way, I got to 25 minutes and that was my first go. So I'd have been there probably to that point again if I'd have continued. But just to let you know, what Mainmeister bought for me, I think it's called Lords of Shadow, was brilliant. Loved it. Thank you very much, matey. That's very decent of you to buy me a game, and it certainly helped take my mind off of things. So that was great. I'm just going to take a little sip of orange juice. And he continues, enjoyed the 2 film shorts you put out yesterday. I've never in my knowledge sat down to watch Starman. Probably back then it was a little tame and not my style, being made sedate in style. I'll check it out on streaming. Yeah, we're talking about Starman here. I've started to do some shorts, film shorts and gaming shorts. And on Monday I brought out a gaming short, but I haven't done too much of the films. I've only done about 2. So I did 2 more. And I purposely chose 2 that were different to each other. One, very classic, but sometimes not watched by many people film, called Basic Instinct with Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas. And it's got one of my favourite scores in it by Jerry Goldsmith. I have to mention Jerry Goldsmith. He's one of my favourite composers. And it's a film noir, crime thriller, quite gory at places, but it's overly sexual. That's the thing. And there's one scene in it that's borderline rape, and I use that word very carefully, but it is. The lady in the scene says no several times, so you can understand why it's been censored over the years. But I understand why the scene is there and why it happened. But it's uncomfortable, and that's what I think is probably difficult for many people to watch this film. But putting that aside, there's a very big Hitchcockian type vibe to it, and Alfred Hitchcock is one of my favourite directors. So it was really good to reminisce a little bit about Basic Instinct. And the other film was Starman, which is a John Carpenter film, which didn't tank at the box office, but it didn't get the love it should have done. It was up for so many awards, including the soundtrack. And quite rightly, it should have won one of them or some of them. But it was out at a time where competition was incredibly heavy. I think it's a 1984 film. So we discussed a little bit about Starman. And the fun thing about it all was probably doing the screen ident, to say that my little video was out. That was great doing that. Took my mind away, and it was a couple of hours on Photoshop. So that was good. And of course the research, which I don't have to do too much on, because I use my collector's software, which catalogues my films to tell me who's in it, plot, synopsis, notes in regards to the background of creating the film. All of that is there. And so those shorts can take about 15 minutes, including prep. So that was quite good, took my mind away from things. So that was those videos and everything this week. So again, we go to here on Denny. It's got, so yet again, we're being bombarded with physical releases. This time, The Outer Limits from the 90s. This is going to cost me an arm and a leg, being as it's coming from Australia. Yeah, and I looked at it and I'd love to buy it, but on DVD, 90 quid. It'd be an instant buy for me if it weren't for the fact that I've got all these things going on in my life, so it looks very much like it might be a pass, but I'll see what happens after my blood tests, see what goes on. He continues, I have Scum 4K tomorrow, initially only the theatrical out, though it's completely uncut and remains an 18 certificate from 88 films. I also got the 2 French Musketeer films, wanted them on 4K, but there doesn't seem to be any currently. I'll show you a little bit about that later on. I'm watching The Lost Lands with my old man Friday night. It's a nice twist near the end, but heavens, it was bloody awful. Paul Anderson churns out another turkey. Yeah, he is known for doing that a little bit. So you got a question for this week. What Filmation productions, cartoons or live action series is your favourite? Pass on my best to your mother. Look after yourself. Filmation, wow. Haven't thought about them in a long time. And they've been with me since my childhood. So let me think. 60s. There was a cartoon that they did based on a film called Fantastic Voyage. I enjoyed that. And there was another one based on a film, Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Both were enjoyable as live action films to me in the 70s when I was going to cinema club. But as the cartoons don't really push anything forward when it comes to the film. In the 70s, a lot more expanse for me. We've got Star Trek, Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, Groovy Ghoulies, Flash Gordon. Those are all from the 80s. New Adventures of Flash Gordon. Again, in that special Filmation type environment. And the only one that crops up in the 90s for me is He-Man. But by then I'd left school and it really wasn't for me because I was an older person. So that's that. And thank you very much for your comment on that. I've just hearted it, so you know I've read it and I've read it out to people. So again, I'll be back in just a moment. And if my glasses look like they're gone a little bit sunshady, that's the reactor lights, because I went outside. Oh, it's beautiful out there. And I deadheaded some of the roses. Got a bit of fresh air. The cat wanted me to play with him. He was all over me. And one of the rose bushes that we just planted, although I deadheaded it, there was some brown leaves appearing. It's because it's been very, very dry. So I got a little watering can, because I tell you, to get a hose to the back of the garden, it's all untangling and all sorts of stuff. I thought quicker for me just to fill up a watering can. So I filled that up and, poured water, into the ground to let it go down. And my God, did that water go straight through that ground and dry up nearly instantly. It really is warm. So I'm sorry. I thought I'll get some bit of fresh air before I continue. But I do love this section, so please don't take any heed to it. And we get to Carl Todd. I haven't heard from Carl Todd in a long time, so it's got, hi Del, I'm back from holiday now. Ah, there you go. There's the reason. I haven't had a chance to catch up with the previous week's videos yet. It's good to see you busy putting out the shorts videos. I hope you are and your mum are okay. Oh, get caught up, matey. There's a lot gone on. Oh my God, I couldn't recap it. It'd take another 4 blogs. But anyway, a few questions for you. When I was on holiday, I spent some time sightseeing around London. On one day, I was walking near the Royal Albert Hall, and I saw that they had just had an event where they showed one of the Spider-Man movies and played the soundtrack using their full orchestra. Oh, I know what you're talking about, yeah. I immediately thought of you. Oh, that's nice. Thanks very much. I wonder if you've ever been to one of those events where a movie is shown to the accompaniment of a live orchestra. Yeah, it happens at the Royal Albert Hall a lot. And I think that there are some cinemas around the country that are the older type that do it. Now, I've been to the Royal Albert Hall twice when that's gone on. The first time I went was they did Fantasia. That was spectacular. Seeing the cartoon and being as it was classical music all the way pretty much through Fantasia, that was a spectacular. That was brilliant. And the second time was Back to the Future. Yeah. They took out the movie score. They must have the ability to do that. So all you had was the picture and the speech, the actor's speech, and the rest was all done by the orchestra that's at the front of it. It was gorgeous, brilliant. I've been to many Back to the Future type events that are beyond the normal cinema. It must be one of the most celebrated films to do. But I've been to one of those mystery film places, where they you book a ticket and they don't tell you where it's going to be at, and then you go and see it, and it's an outside broadcast of the film projected against brick walls. Some of them have been spectacular because they've been at castles and things, and the last one I went to was near Blenheim Palace, which is not far from Oxford, so it's not far from me. So that was brilliant. Mystery theatre, I think they call it. Since COVID, I haven't heard too much about that anymore, so I'm not sure. But I got into the Royal Albert Hall mostly when there was a friend that I used to see in London just after I'd left Manchester and I moved back home. And they told me about the proms, and I said, I've always known about the proms but never been to it. It's called the Summer of Music, really. And there's no end of events. It's a bit like, I suppose, the Edinburgh Festival, but it's all to do with music. So it's classical and TV and soundtracks and all of that sort of stuff. And then there's modern and synth nights with synthesizers and all sorts. And if you're in London, it must be absolutely brilliant. If you're not in London, it's a bit of a trip, to get to London and back, So I can only go to some of them. But I'll tell you what, I'd be in my element every night. I'd be probably going to an event. There'd be something there for me. So I hope that answers your question. Number two, also while I was on holiday, I ended up buying several movies on 4K. One thing that I always notice when buying from the UK is the lack of the digital codes that you often get with the US releases. I wonder if you have any thoughts about the lack of digital codes in the UK. Did you ever use them in the past? Or is it something that you were never interested in? Oh my God, that's a subject and a half. I could rant about this all over the place. Now, we got the codes sort of almost the same time as you did, and they were under a company called Ultraviolet. And you'd always have a case that would say this film contains the Blu-ray, the DVD, this was back in the day, and a digital code. When you open the digital code, pound to a penny, it was Ultraviolet. And you'd put the code in, and you'd have a digital copy. Now, sometimes the digital copy would be on the disc itself, so it'd be a multi-format disc. But the Ultra codes were great. All you had to do was just go to the website, sign in with your user account, type the code in, and bang, you had a digital copy. You could have it on your phone, you could stream it to your TV, all sorts. But Ultraviolet went bust. And they had to, therefore, go through a whole process of telling their customers that they were about to lose their films. However, while they were waiting to disband, they were passing on the film rights to another streaming platform to you to have, but they would be under each of the distributors' own system. So instead of having a Warner film under Ultraviolet, I'd have to go to the Warner Videos account to see it. So you had to sort of like open up several accounts, and then you had to tell them to link this account, and then it would copy it across, and then Ultraviolet would sever that account when they disbanded. But some of this stuff that I had was TV stuff like Doctor Who. I was buying box sets of Doctor Who seasons, and they had Ultraviolet codes, but when the codes lapsed, when Ultraviolet went, BBC had no streaming service. So you lost them all. There was nothing that you could do about it. You could download it, I suppose, before they went bust. But at this particular time, even Ultraviolet didn't know quite what they could salvage and what they couldn't. So most of it moved to, I think, Amazon in the end. And I think a lot of my account stuff is there. But then the whole code system just died in this country. And therefore, with no more codes coming in, those particular sites, I'm pretty sure, are probably thinking, well, now we've got this account for years and nobody's going even to look at their stuff because it's all old films. I wouldn't be surprised if I'd find out that my account, probably for not logging in for 2 years, is gone. So all of that money and all of those codes and that time that I put in, gone. And this is why physical media is so important to me, and streaming is such a secondary thing to me, such a small, insignificant thing, because it's not yours. The company goes bust, you've lost a lot. Physical media, it's in my hand. It's here, look, I can play it. It has its benefits. It has its bad side. I feel it has more bad side than good. I go for physical as much as I possibly can. End of story, really. But yeah, I could spend an awful lot of time on that, Carl. So, hope you had a great holiday. Salute, my friend. Thank you so much for commenting. Hope you're well, and come back often, I hope. So we move now forward to Robert's Retro Gaming, or should I say Queen of Canada. Oh, what do I say? Queen. He's a bloke, isn't he? King of Canada. He does lots and lots of, if you don't know already, he's a friend of the channel, a friend of mine, does lots and lots of gaming reviews, plus some other little things. You'd be surprised at just what else he does. But he does it across the board. You know, he's got some stuff that he's got like Minecraft and No Man's Sky that he's doing longer series on. But mostly it'll be the days of our pasts. You know, I won't say retro, I won't say vintage, all of that sort of stuff. But it's mostly Atari and Spectrum. The one thing I've noticed though, he's pulled totally away from Commodore 64. Maybe it's because it's so close to the Atari ones. But it's sad to see that since the 40th anniversary, which sort of like expanded a little bit of more streaming on Commodore 64, there now just seems to be endless Amstrad Spectrum, even consoles. And the C64 is getting less and less and less. And the majority will turn around and say, well, I've done that for a long time. I want to move on a little bit. But you're all moving on at the same time, meaning it's now a dead world out there for C64. So, yeah, my little bit's gone, diminished quite a bit. But anyway, let's move on to Robert and just have a sip. Nice bit of orange juice. It's a bit warm now. I did have ice cubes in it, but it's melted. Robert starts off, good day, brother Dell. But of a mixed bag for you at work and with mum. Cherish your time together, even though it's difficult. I spent quite a bit of time with my mom in her last couple of years when we knew she was dying, and I wish it had been more. We can only do our best in the moment and try to keep ourselves up, which is why I'm so distraught about this supporting of my mum being taken away. But hey, I would have sworn that I left a comment last week. I'll go check. Yes, I did, but it's disappeared. Oh, how I love YouTube's automated systems. Sarcasm. I'll maybe post the comment from last week as a reply to this one. Because of the problems Steve's been having with comments, I decided to copy and paste my comment from last week. Believe it or not, I even asked a question and everything. No, I believe it, man. What most people do is that they, as soon as they've started watching the stream, they hit the comment button and they put placeholder. That keeps a comment box open there for you, and then when you paste it, because it's been there a couple of days, you tend to find that Amazon don't remove it unless there's some real big reason. But that's what others are doing, and it seems to be working. So you've put, I'm not too enamored with Google these days, but the age verification thing is hard to debate because they are complying with a law. Annoying to be sure. If streaming is something that takes you out of yourself and your thoughts, then have at it. The timings of a UK stream in the evening doesn't often work out for me, but if I pick up on it and have some time, I'll pop in. That's really nice of you. Yeah, I've noticed that. When you go to MainMeister, I suppose it's more your start of your day. When I'm doing mine, which is when my mum's gone to bed and that, which is like 10 or 11 o'clock, it's more the middle of your day, and of course you're doing family things. And then of course when you're at the point where you could really sit down and watch, we're all in bed and we're approaching getting up because it's like 4, 5, 6 in the morning because of the hours difference. So yeah, it is difficult, and I do totally understand it. It's not like you're trying to avoid us. It's just very difficult. In regards to the debate over the age verification, it was more to do with the fact that it's going to be circumvented. It's already being circumvented now. VPNs are being used. I know it works on my phone. I've tried it. And the fact that the small businesses that take money now have more code to add to their websites. They're finding it very difficult. Some of them have gone under already. When something like this is in place, the government used to be quite good because they used to offer advice, websites, and even employ small companies to help with things like this, like writing code into your business plan or whatever it is for your website and so forth. None of that now. It's all off your own back. Tough shit. You either comply or you shut down. And that's very sad, whichever way you look at it. You continue, by the way, only monsters put the toilet paper under the bottom of the roll. I'll defend that stance to the death, or maybe not to the death, but to the pain. Yeah, I think I would as well, but we haven't got, in my room, just out there, there's a toilet and a shower and a sink. It hasn't got a toilet roll holder. It's just on the side, so basically there is no wrapping this around and that. It's, find the end and wrap it around your hand and there you are. So yeah, don't have those issues, but I'd probably fight it to the end. All the best to you and your mum and your family, and thank you so much, my friend. Absolutely brilliant. We moved to Steve's Gaming, and it's got here, hello Del, sorry for this late comment. The week goes past so damn fast, it seems. Great blog as always, and I hope you and your mum are managing things okay. It sounds like your workplace is a real pain. Not sure if they are incompetent or they just like messing people around. The heat is killing me, and I'd normally be moaning about it, but quite frankly I have bigger issues to worry about. But anyway, on with the questions. Yeah, just with that statement, by the way. Thanks very much for joining us, you little bastard. Fucking hate you, you little shit. I have to do my salute to Steve, sorry. You moaning little bastard. Let's see what you put. Workplace a real pain. Yeah, I sometimes feel that. Sometimes I feel really close to them. They come across sometimes like, oh, we'll do everything we can for you. And then there are other times they sound like they're the most blandest, po-faced, blank-faced corporation that couldn't give a shit about you. And you're up one minute and you're down the next and all sorts of stuff. But I do know that they've been as good as they can when it comes to me and caring for my mum. So I can't really say too bad, but there are things where I just need to rant and get it off my head. You've got some questions. Question 1, thinking about you from your first computer to right now, what was the best game that someone else bought you, and what was it on? Oh, what a great question, but a difficult question, because anybody that's followed my blog or been listening in or just really has noticed some of the early videos where I answered a lot of my personal life. I bought the majority of the games that I wanted. I'd get pocket money and go out and mow lawns and all sorts of stuff. And then when I left school, which was quite early, and got a job, it was even easier. So games were something I bought. People didn't buy me. People would then only buy you something at your birthday or Christmas. Now, I left school in 1985-86. So you can imagine most of the console stuff that we recognise as being modern consoles. So most of the cartridges and most of the bigger software that cost an awful lot of money were at a time where I could buy it myself. And the ones that they bought me when I was a child, they would be because it was Christmas or birthday. So I'll name a couple here. Definitely Omega Race on the VIC-20 was bought for me to go with my new computer for when I packed it, and that was bought to me by my nan. So obviously what she did was she gave Dad some money. He went out and got the computer and then bought an extra cartridge and then gave that to my nan to wrap up and put under the tree. And I would therefore see that my nan had been downtown and bought me a game. But you see, the VIC-20 is what, 1981 for me. So, yeah, 12 years old. Or somewhere around there. I remember before that on the Atari, my first game I bought for it was Yar's Revenge. Love that game. Love that game. It's so horrible and ancient looking now. But oh my God, did I play that to death. It was just so colourful with that shield in the centre, which is a coding cheat. An anomaly, really. But yeah, loved that. So Yar's Revenge would be one. Everything else I pretty much bought. I'm sure there are others ones. There'll be stuff that I bought on diskette or whatever, or they bought me an application. But those are the ones that come to mind. So you continue then, and hopefully that was a good answer. But question 2 is, what is your favourite war film of all time? All the best, mate, and love to your mum. Oh my God, that is a difficult question, because being another thing when you're a film buff or a person who just loves film and wants to talk about film all the time, you've seen an awful lot of films, and war films come in many guises. You've got historic ones, you've got modern day, and you've also got really last century. So, you know, when it comes to that, it's a bit difficult. But I always remember on a bank holiday watching The Great Escape, and that was a war film, so that's definitely there. I've already recently upgraded my DVD copy to Blu-ray of a film called Waterloo. That's brilliant. If you don't know what that's about, my God, you really do need to do some history checking. Saving Private Ryan, 1917, Black Hawk Down. They're all considered war films, more modern take on them. Brilliant. Loved every single one of them. But there are films like Waterloo that were period pieces that were equally fantastic. You look at the battle sequences in Waterloo, it's amazing. And that's the end of your questions. Thanks very much, Steve. So we'll move on now. And the next one up is my friend Ian Hill. So I'll just be back in a moment. Just got to check my mum because it's getting quite late. I've been doing so much. So let me see where the pause is. There it is. So we moved past my friend Steve. Bastard, fucking hate him. And moved to my next great friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I do a live stream on Wednesday. I'm eternally grateful to him for doing that. We have great fun. We have fantastic chats. And like I say, if you've got time on a Wednesday, please do look him up. Absolutely fantastic. And he starts off his little comment to me. Hi, Del Boy. Hope you and your mother are doing okay and coping with the hot weather. I enjoyed our Wednesday live stream, and it was another good one, despite one of the bigger ones taking place at the same time. So I understand what he means there. Basically what it is that I like people to have a choice. You know, I like people to be able to come to a stream, and if it's a chat, which most of ours are with, and not a selection of games for you to play, you know, which you can sort of like organise, right? Then basically we can, you know, they don't need to choose between two great channels that have got a similar function going on. There's no point doing a film chat if there's nobody there to spark an interest to say, oh yeah, but do you remember when Roger Moore did this, or when Sean Connery did this, or did you see the fact that after he did that film he moved on and he did this film, and all of that sort of stuff. The person has to be there to do that. And if you've got two choices and they go therefore having to make it and think, well, I'll go to this one but I'll watch this one afterwards, when you're watching it afterwards it's a rerun. And it's just like that little disclaimer that you used to have on ITV that said, please remember that the phone lines are down for this competition. This was only applicable for when the show was live. Please do not try and phone this number. Well, it's exactly the same. Don't try and ask us questions. The live stream's gone. you know, you had to be there at the time, which is why I've always tried to sort of like avoid it and give people the equal opportunity. But I will say this, I don't think there's any malice in anybody doing it. I think what it is it's most of the time it's just scheduling conflicts. Also, you got to remember that YouTube's only so big. You know, if you turn around and say, well, I'll do it Thursday next week, well, then somebody else you'll be encroaching on. So it's not like there's anything that you can do about it. It's just that if I knew that there were 2 days available for me to do a live stream, and I knew that one of my friends was doing one on a particular day, and they came to me and they said, I can't reschedule it, there's nothing I can do because one of the guests can only do it on that day, then I'll be going, sorry, I'll do it next day then. It's not a problem. So it's not a biggie. But yeah, we recognise that channels only grow if you grow your numbers, and you can only grow your numbers if some of the more bigger YouTube chat things take into consideration that, you know, the smaller one wants to grow. But neither here nor there. We still had great fun, and it's not a problem to us at all. The hot weather has not been good for me, having a lot of hot sweats. This is connected with my diabetes. They became quite debilitating, and I don't feel well. So I'm hoping it will get cooler. Though I don't like it being cold, at least putting on extra clothes can help. Though I do remember feeling cold a lot of the time. Under my duvet was the best place. Anyway, it wouldn't be the same without me having a good moan. Now I'm 65. Feels like it's part of getting old. Yeah, because he's just got to his OAP stage. So let's wish him a well OAP. Miserable bastard. Right, as usual, I've watched more films this week. There was only one which was outstanding, which I reviewed on my channel. It was called The Last Valley, starring Michael Caine and Omar Sharif. And for me, it was exciting. It was set in the 17th century Europe at the time of 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. On the surface, it seemed religious war between Catholic and Protestants. However, rulers choose sides which gave them more territory. So was it, for example, of the empire building? England was not involved in it because a period of change was leading to civil war. Also, the Puritans were setting their sights on the New World and colonising America. So this was a fascinating period of history. Michael Caine was excellent playing the part of a mercenary soldier who did not believe in God. Omar Sharif played a teacher who could not act as an intermediary. I love this film. So my question this week is, the apocalypse is back again. God, I don't know how to get around this apocalypse. Which 5 items would you take with you to help you to survive? Oh my God. I've never really thought. Let me think. Right, well, I take the medikit from my car. It's amazing. I bought a new car, and the one thing that was underneath the seat was there was a medikit that had some bandages and plasters and rubbing alcohol. So I take it these are quite common to buy, so I'll do that. And of course, I've got a Swiss Army knife, so I'll probably take that along with me as well. Because of sleep, I probably would take one of those special pillows that's very good for people that can't sleep very well. You know, ones with memory foam on, or have got a non-allergic layer or something like that. Can't think of anything else, but that's a bloody good question, you know. Thank you very much. He's put all the best to you and have a grand time, and I think exactly the same to him. Thank you so much. What a great question. I'll be just a moment. It's funny, but Sunday seems to be the day where a lot of people are turning up, probably to see my sister more than me, and definitely to see my mum. And I've just had my aunt pop her head round the door, first time in months, to be quite honest. She wanted to know how I was, and I had to reiterate everything that I've told you guys in regards to the doctor's surgery, and she's amazed at it all, just like me. And she said, "Just stay calm. We'll work through this." And we'll see what next week brings. You never know. There is in this letter a thing that says if you want to appeal, and there is also something there that says that the GP can write a letter to show evidence that you're okay to drive. And I'm hoping that that's going to be something that fast turns this around, because I don't want to go down a monthly route after the sleep clinic and then having to, what it says, apply for my driving license again. I thought it was a pause, but revoked means revoked, it would seem. So that's almost like having to learn to drive again type situation, you know. So let's hope that's not the case. In fact, actually, when you learn to drive and they do the eye test and they do the theory test, I wonder if they do anything in regards to sleep. Doubt they do. Anyway, the next person is my good friend Martroid. And what has he put? He's put, "I was genuinely surprised to see a teaser trailer for Darksiders 4 pop up in my feed the other day. That's something I honestly didn't think we'd ever get. It's actually inspired me to fire up the third game again, since I never played it, never really gave it a proper shot the first time around. Probably something you've been asked before then. But are there any game or movie sequels you'd love to see, Del? Even if you're not holding your breath for them." Oh my god. Back in the day, I wanted nothing but sequels. I wanted, oh my god, Jeff, you've done a great game, Ancipital. When are we getting Ancipital 2? You know, all of that sort of stuff. But as I've gotten older, and just like the film industry, I've noticed that sequels just sort of like weaken what the great film the first one was. And in the same retrospect, games can also do that. Renegade, I think, is probably a perfect example where they love, the Spectrum guys love the first two Renegades. Third one, bag of shit. Manic Miner turned into Jet Set Willy, and then all it was added levels and all sorts of stuff. So I'm less inclined to want a sequel, but the only game that I really would spend any huge amount of time on would probably be Guild Wars 3, which I believe is being made. It's been a good 10 years since Guild Wars 2 came out, and there was only a 5-year gap, I think, between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, so it's about time that engine was rehauled, and they started bringing out a third one. So, yeah, and I loved that game because it was free. You know, there is no microtransactions of a sort that you have to use. There are them there, you know. But you can actually get every item within the game if you play hard enough. And I just loved the exploration of the game, to be quite honest, and moving the story on. So I'd have a great time, I think, with Guild Wars 3. So there isn't really, you know, a fantastic sequel that I can really think of. I wonder sometimes if I've missed something out. So I'm just going to go back, just going to answer the questions again, because I've got a funny feeling I didn't really read out enough of Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and I do apologise if this disjoints things a little bit. So his question that he had for me, if I haven't missed out, by the way, was if there was an apocalypse, what items would I take? And I've said that I remember saying about the first aid kit, but I couldn't remember if I did anything else. I'll take a Swiss Army knife for definite, because I've got one of those. We used to have one as little boys. Thinking about it, you'd want a torch, wouldn't you? And I suppose you could take a mobile phone that's got a torch with you, but the mobile phone wouldn't work in the apocalypse. The battery would die quite quickly. So I'd probably take a standard torch. And I've always thought about this, but I've never looked it up. But I take it if you went on Amazon, you could probably find something like portable water purification kits. And I've always noticed that in these apocalyptic times, when you're watching a film, the first thing you have to do is look for food and water. Water's always the hardest one, because it's how do you make it pure again? Obviously, we all know about boiling water, and then it turns to steam, and then if you can catch the steam, then you've got a much more purer base. But I don't want to add things like kettles and all that sort of stuff, so I'd probably get a purification kit with me. So I hope that answers that. I've definitely answered your question, Martroid, so thank you so much. And like I say, apologies if I've gone back and I did answer that. But we'll move on to my next friend, Wee Baba. We'll try and keep this as smooth as possible. And he's put, I have a day off today, so I managed to listen along over a few sittings today, Del, while drawing and out in the garden for a short bit, scraping moss off the driveway. We have rabbits, and randomly someone just sat bags of lettuce on my doorstep this morning. It was a bit weird. As for your comment about the game, I don't remember seeing it. Seeing it will need to have a look. I've had a few whiskies over the weekend, so perhaps I read it while I was a bit tipsy. I will need to check it out and put it on my wish list. I can then wait till it comes back on sale again. Okay, so time for a question. Right, I know what he's saying there. I bought him a game. It was that 72p game that I was telling you about. I put it in a comment saying, oh, you want to get this? Because he's not a friend of mine on Steam, so I couldn't buy it for him. And it was on sale. Now, I think it's still on sale, matey. I don't think you need to wait for a sale. But if you are going to wait for a sale, I think that the most expensive that item has ever been is £4.49. But yeah, I can understand where you might want to wait until it's 72 pence again. But I think it still is. So it's worth you having a look. Question. In regards to the weird lettuce donation to my rabbits, have you ever had a similar experience? And if not, what is the weirdest thing that you've ever found? For me, it was probably a dolphin skeleton, which was on the beach which I saw during a walk. Oh my God. On my walks, all I ever see is road rage, road trash, like animals that have been hit by cars. Nobody's ever donated anything and left it on the doorstep unless you count Amazon and not reading the instructions on my delivery, because they're told don't leave anything on the doorstep. But I think as a kiddie, I did help my granddad look after the ferrets. And I do believe that some of the neighbours used to drop things off, because we had what they call a shared driveway, or a ginnel, where the path is the only path that takes you out of the house, and your side doesn't have that. So you have what they call a shared access. And I think they used to leave bacon rinds and things for me to give to our ferrets, because we had ferrets to help with rabbiting back in the day. So yeah. But have I found something on a walk or anything like that? No, not really. Maybe it's because I'm not that observant. I think you've been really successful with that. What a fantastic thing to find. Dolphin skeleton. My God. Brilliant. Thanks very much, and salute, my friend. If you haven't guessed already, he's got a channel and it's brilliant. It's learning how to draw. And although he uses one particular piece of software, he also advises what other programs you could do it in and how it would easily mimic what his particular software does. And we moved to Colin Jones, aka Ponder. And he's put, I'm not going to swear, but by it you'll be messed around at work. Yeah, I am. Not going to have to drop. I'm going to have to drop by your Wednesday stream sometime, even though it's not my thing. Even if it's just to see what it's all about. You can guess what my biggest problem is, though. Wink. Sorry to hear about your mother's bad health. I hope you and she get better. I'm sending out my regards as always. It's really nice of you. And yeah, don't worry about it. Many people discover ours weeks later, months later, and you wouldn't feel out of place, especially if you like talking about TV stuff like Doctor Who or anything like that. You'll find yourself something in there. And then, of course, we're also talking techie stuff, like when we used to have our video recorders, top loaders, front loaders, azimuth alignments, all sorts of stuff like that we talk about. So yeah, I think you'd enjoy it, but don't kick yourself in the teeth over it. You then mentioned microtransactions, especially on paid games. Killed mobile gaming, stone dead for me. I've been through the bullying myself because I'm so small, and I'm right with you on that one. Yeah, because I was talking a bit about bullying. You do have to take care of yourself first. Without that that foundation, things will crumble. And yes, they do. I mean, that's the reason why I get a bit scared when I'm a bit lonely. But you know, it is what it is, and I do what I can. Thanks for the t-shirt offer, but these days it's a bit close to the knuckle. Funny back in the day though. Yeah, that was that t-shirt that I held up for him to see. Absolutely brilliant. And you've got my question: if you left this life and found you could live again, but not as a person, a human person, but as a animal, which would you choose? Wow. I mean, I'm so happy that I'm a human, you know, and you choose between a boy and a girl. But when it comes to an animal, I suppose what I'd want would be one that's long lasting. But then again, if it was bloody awful, you wouldn't want to be around, would you? And I think that's where the question comes from a little bit. I don't think I'd want to come back as anything domestic like a dog or a cat, even though they get spoiled rotten. I think I'd probably come back as a wild animal. I do like the idea of coming back as an eagle, soaring high in the sky, looking down, getting my next meal, etc., etc. That sounds quite exciting. So I hope that answers your question, Colin. Thank you so much. And the last one that I've got here is from a new person, I think. Let's have a little look. Yep, it's from Ross C6E, and he's put, Del, respect to you for looking after your mum. You're doing well. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I try my best. Life moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I can't keep up, and sometimes I'm cut back even further by the police of a sort and stopped dead in my sheets. So there we go. That is all of the comments that were there. I'm glad that I read them all out. Every single one was interesting. Made me think about an awful lot. So I'll be back in just a moment, and we will be doing the shout-outs. And things people have done this week in their YouTube channel. It'll be a moment. And back again, and we're moving on, you know, to the watched on YouTube stuff and everything. But of course, it's been a bit disjointed with everybody coming in and all that sort of stuff, and having to take breaks. And I remember that Colin asked me a question about what animal I was going to be, and hopefully I've answered that quite well. Don't think I actually got to an animal that I was going to be, but I know that I'd rule out domestic pets like cats and dogs. The funny thing about it is, if I want to elaborate a bit more, is that we're very lucky being humans, aren't we? We live quite a long life. We've got freedom of expression to get out there and do what we want. Animals are all hunted, pretty much. You know, if you wanted to be, you know, a rhino, you're hunted for your ivory and your nose, and deer, you know, for the meat and the antlers, and you know, everything. I'd probably therefore would look at the bird type thing, you know, like an eagle, just so I could sort of like fly out, spread my wings wherever and go wherever I wanted to go. Looking down, finding my next meal would be the hardest thing that I'd probably have to do, but it'd be second nature if you think about you just being an eagle. That's what you learn to be, isn't it? But your life spell, you know, I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I could have thought of things like pumas, lions, gorillas, all sorts of stuff, but each one has got that negativity about it, and it'll always come down to quality of life, and they're all hunted. Yeah. So anyway, watched on YouTube. Let's get to the stuff that I've watched this week. And like I say, I've had a troublesome week, and it's taken quite a lot of time away from me. Work has been great. I've still got dozens of letters to get caught up on, you know, to open. And you know, but they're all going to be bills and things like that. There's the dreaded letter from the DVLA. So let's spend some time on what I did watch on YouTube. This week in retro, there was the standard free that you always get, and this one was The Screaming is Silenced. A little bit about AOL really there. Heretic and Hexen remastered, and retro retail. So there was some quite interesting diverse subjects there. Do I miss dial-up and AOL and all of that sort of stuff? In some ways I do. I remember my US robotics modems. I went for internal for a long time. And in the end, I favoured actually more the US robotics external ones. They had a nice little design. They were small. Plugged it into the back. Dialed up. Bang. There you were. You know, the internal ones, less cabling, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I did like the 56k US robotics modems back in the day. Of course, when I moved to Manchester, the internet came through the same provider as the person that was supplying your subscription service to Sky. Now I was with NTL, I think, up there, or Cable and Wireless. Is that right? Cable and Wireless? Yeah, Cable and Wireless. So the internet was faster because they had broadband that much quicker because they were a cabled area. Manchester was, where I came from, still using copper wire. So it was an eye opener, and it's what made me learn about things like news groups and torrents and all sorts of stuff. Especially because I was alone. I was mostly therefore on the computer and playing games and all of that sort of stuff. So it was a haven for me, the internet, and especially having those faster speeds at an earlier stage in my life. So yeah, Heretic and Hexen, yeah, I had those games. Do I want them remastered? I'm really the world of third person firing and all of that sort of stuff. I haven't found a good one to play for a long time. I think there was one that Colin saw me play live once, Bolt Gun, which was based around the Warhammer thing, was the last time I played anything decent. When I say decent, I'm sure there's a lot cracking stuff. It's just that I'd have to learn all the controls again, and I'd have all that shooting in your head crap going on again if I went online with it, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, retro retail. Well, of course, yeah, it's on the expanse, isn't it? I mean, we've got keks and so forth, but there's God bless going into small towns and finding those little establishments that sell those retro goodies that we so want for our old consoles, old computers, and all that sort of stuff. Price is astronomical, but it's always nice to go in there and have a little look around and go, oh, I had that. I had the bongos for a Dreamcast. Oh, I had the maracas for Samba de Amigo, all that sort of stuff. So that's this week in retro. That was a nice hour on Saturday. Techmoan was a nice half hour straight afterwards. He debated, is VHS back? He's a bit actually behind the times on this one because boutique film distributors have been putting some films on VHS now for quite some time, and he actually bought one, Escape from New York, which was last year's boutique label release, so it wasn't exactly new, but it was nice for him to try and attempt to show us what the rings, and that you have to jump through the hoops to get a VHS to work again these days. And the picture quality, And he also had a look at these tapes to see if they were brand new, and they're not. Cheeky bastards. They went and got all old tapes, degaussed them, so basically wiped them with a magnet, and they've put them in their own case. But they're not, the film's length, is not taken into consideration when you're recording it. So this film is, 155 minutes? He noticed that there was a good lead out of that, of a good 30 odd minutes. So to be quite honest, you're buying as well something that's been pre-recorded on before. So that was good. Gadget Show, I think, is still on a break. And Chronologically Gaming, which I started off watching, it used to be on once a day for a week, is now twice a day for a week. So one of them is all about computers, and another one is a little bit more lax, but funny. So Chronologically Gaming is still a great place to be. The next thing I saw was a channel called Spider Dunk. Now this had something called Spider-Man's 10 Worst Retcons. So I wouldn't normally be looking at a number of these channels, but it's that word retcon. And I think we all know what a retcon is. But Spider-Man's got hundreds of them. Now, as a comic book reader, I've loved in my childhood knowing exactly where everything is, what everyone was, and what they do, and all of that sort of stuff. So retconning is where a writer said, I wasn't quite happy with how that story was, so I'm going to change it. Change the law, in other words. So it listed the top 10, and there's a lot more of them. And sometimes, or should I say most of the time, my experience, when they retcon something, it's worse. And that's quite right in the guise of the 10 that he chose. Absolutely. So it was actually quite interesting. We then have a site called White Pointer Gaming, which was your questions answered. How do they code those graphical tricks in gaming history? Yeah, so this guy, he sort of like explains how they got the sprite scaling to work between the Neo Geo version and, say, a Jaguar, or whatever. I can't quite remember what it was, but he went into great depth. He looked at how it worked on what's the game as an example. Yeah, so he chose a Neo Geo game that was on a PC engine, and it was Art of Fighting. And in that game, the scaling works by coming in and out of the screen, and every time you got close, the sprites would double up inside, so you could fight, and the further away, the more it would pan out. And PC Engine has no sprite scaling, so I had to think then for a minute what it was. But he showed you how it worked and how they did it. You know, in regards to how drawing background planes work and how graphics work in general in regards to sprites. You know, because most consoles have sprites, they're not character-driven experiences. So yeah, that was brilliant. Really enjoyed that. So the next thing I watched was Pixel Playback. Now, I know a lot of these channels, but I don't watch them an awful lot. But back in the day, I used to know sort of like how they did the tips and tricks of the Commodore 64, you know, like raster interrupt lines and splitting sound channels into two, and all to do with timing generally. And this particular channel was talking more about the consoles and their history. And so Pixel Playback did GameCube, and it said Nintendo's weirdest console. And it was interesting to know a little bit about the back history of it, and the fact that although not greatly well received, I bought one, but it did look toyish, and it had a carry handle that made it look like a lunchbox. They bought no end of add-ons for it, you know, that you bolted on underneath, and you could play your Game Boy games on it, and your Game Boy Advance games on it, and more controllers, and added rumble packs and wireless capability. It was all a big expansion for Nintendo before they moved into their next phase of consoles, which was the killer Wii. The Wii. My God, everybody bought a Wii, didn't they? So the GameCube was sort of like considered to be their move into medium other than cartridges, although they were those little dinky ones. So I suppose it was supposed to help with piracy in many ways, but we all got round that. You know how pirates are, they're very, very inventive. So that was interesting, like that. And then I watched the Dave Cullen show. Now, I only watch him on occasion. He's a film bloke who just likes chatting about all sorts of things, and how woke things are or how canon things are. So he did a review called It's Been a Midsummer at the Movies. So he talked about the films that have come out since sort of like Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible all the way up to the Fantastic Four, and talked a little bit about the quality of the films, how well they were received, and the mistakes that were made. So it was quite interesting. Didn't agree with everything that was said, but that was quite good. Then I saw this other channel. I don't know why I'm watching these, but they're very, very interesting. This one was called Prime Meridian Channel, and the title of it was Why do we need wasps? And I've always wondered this. Wasps are bloody horrible. And I kept thinking, in our ecosystem, what the bloody hell do they do? What's the point in them? All they do is go around stinging you. That's it. They bugger all else. So it was quite an informative thing, actually, to understand that they are greatly needed in our ecosystem. So, you know, I'd let you watch that, because, you know, I don't want to go into the ins and outs of it all, but yeah, wasps are needed, believe it or not. And then watched on YouTube, the last one was Midnight's Edge. Now, this person deliberated the rumoured impact of Star Trek now that Skydance have bought the IP from Paramount. Now, this is nothing new. Paramount has sold Star Trek for many years, bits and bobs of it. You know, you could have this just for the gaming side, this for just the merchandise side. Paramount got rid of it to another channel, but then bought it back or revoked the license of them having it because they were going to launch their own new Paramount channel, and that's where the new Star Trek IPs, Strange New Worlds, Discovery, were going to be. So he was talking about Skydance, because Skydance made those 3 movies with Chris Pine as Kirk and all that sort of stuff. I wanted to know, will that fix the terrestrial side of Star Trek, being as it's pretty much broken, with only certain episodes of Picard working, although I did really like every episode of the last season of Picard, season 3, but Discovery was a mess, and Strange New Worlds tends to be heading into that mess type thing again. So yeah, that was quite interesting. Really enjoyed that. So we're now moving into film, TV and soundtracks on YouTube, and as you know, I have to mention some of my friends here, but also stuff that I don't watch all the time and are not really friends of mine, but most of these people on this page I've spoken to. And we start off with Ian Hill, The Ramblings, and oh my God, man, for a man who's an old age pensioner, you don't have to bring out some stuff. He did my top war films from 1931 to 1935, because his comedy ones have now finished. He did Doctor Who Mind Warp review, which is the review now of Doctor Who in the Colin Baker era, and in particular it's the Trial of a Time Lord. So it's a very interesting season. A lot went on in that season. I still think the Valiant was a fantastic idea. But anyway, the next one, he did a review of The Last Valley, which he called sort of like film of the month, and I can understand why, really. I have watched it since he mentioned it. X-Files Season 4, Episode 5. I think that's right, is it? Season 4, Episode 16, sorry. So it's 16 episodes into Season 4. Immensely loving his series on this, because I haven't seen them in a long time, and I can sit down, watch them, and then critique it myself. So that's always one that you can play along with if you know what the next ones are going to be. And then he did a live with me. What can I say? Love every minute when we do our lives, and it gives me great pleasure to go over his back catalogue, watch them, and then thumb them up. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much, my man. Absolutely brilliant. So it's got to that stage where my sister's just about to go. I just checked to see how my mum is. My sister's checking my mum over. Make sure she doesn't need anything changing and all of that sort of stuff. Get me caught up with what she had for dinner. Because my sister's not coming back now until tomorrow morning. I'm going to put my mum to bed myself tonight. So I'm going to spend as much time as I can with my mum. And it gives my sister a night off. We haven't found a way of giving me time to be off. And that's one of the reasons why I the problem with sleep is. But we'll get there. And of course, she gave me a biscuit, look. So if I'm munching a little bit, I'm ever so sorry. But it's got to that point where breakfast was such a long time ago, being as I was up at 7 this morning. But anyway, the last thing that I did with Ian was live with him. Had a great time on Wednesday. We talked about lots of stuff. We had a great time. I always look forward to Wednesday. It's my little respite to actually talk to someone, talk to like-minded friends. They can ask me questions about how my life is going. They can check up on me. I can check up on them, and have some fun, which is why we want that particular Wednesday to grow. I know I'm eternally grateful to Ian Hill, the Ramblings, and if you haven't subscribed to him, well, what's stopping you? Absolute great guy, and he does so much diverse stuff. I mean, you don't have to be into films. There's TV and there's magazines, and he even talks about the music and the old grey whistle test. Do you remember the old grey whistle test and all them bands that were on and all of that? If you wanted to talk about heavy metal, if you wanted to talk about folk, if you wanted to talk about all of the music of that particular era with old grey whistle test, there's your place, man. Jesus. Anyway, moving from one educated bloke to another, Mondo Chalovic Movies has brought out something this week. It was his 4K and Blu-ray pickups. And I'm not really enamoured by a lot of those pickup things. You know, a lot of them are just there to show off. You know what I mean? You know, oh, this £200 set I've got, or this steelbook that you can only get in this country, and all of this sort of stuff, because I can't get them. It's nice to see them, but I can see that in a picture on a website somewhere. You know what I mean? So I do watch them though. I mean, I tell you a person who does it really, really well. That's Euphoria Pictures, and he there is no gluttony or side showing. You know what I mean with him? He's a genuine guy, genuine collector who just basically loves to, you know, tell you what's out there. And on some occasions, and I wish it would be more often, he'll tell you where he got it from and that you can still get it. So, you know, definitely tune into that guy. I think Euphoria Pictures. Yeah, I had to think that for a moment. But Mondo Chalovic Movies, hasn't got a bad bone in his body, knows everything about horror, even shows off books, and he loves his record collection. So there's an awful lot there, and I learned an awful lot of him in the last couple of weeks about shelves. I actually did go to his site and find that bit about shelves. He built his own shelves, and of course he goes into the ins and outs of buying something from IKEA or building the shelves yourself. I'm tempted, you know, if I ever have the money to do that myself, to go the shelf route, especially when you consider skirting boards. You know, when you buy something from IKEA and you push it against the wall, there's always the skirting board issue. You know what I mean? You build these things and you build them up slightly and push them against the wall and screw them in. You can get rid of that skirting board issue. So yeah, but going down the route of doing it yourself, getting the timber and all that sort of stuff, yeah, lots of positives with that. Anyway, moving on from Mondo, who I recommend you also subscribe to, Through the Lens, Josh. Now, I missed his community question here, but his channel this week was discussing my subscribers' movie hot takes. And unfortunately, I'd have given him one to discuss, but Ian Hill, the Ramblings, did get a mention there, so that was nice. And it just gives you, Josh, the idea or the opinion, you know, to actually counteract the reason that somebody doesn't like it or the reason somebody likes it. Absolutely marvellous. That's just what you want. And you, of course, you get your name mentioned. So there's a bonus. So Through the Lens, another one. Did you see that? Now, I try to watch Did You See That as much as I can, but I tend to watch the reviews now more than anything. Mostly because if he's doing his chats, it's when I'm looking after my mum. To be quite honest, that's the reason, matey, that I'm not there so much. But he did a review of K-pop Demon Hunters, which was weird. I know what K-pop is, and I didn't think that I would like the review because I don't really go for K-pop. But that was interesting. And then he did his review of The Naked Gun, which may be a little bit late, but it's still current. So it'd be as if it'd be the same as me trying to do a review now of Superman with everybody now gone and seen it. Still valid. You know, these things, once they're recorded, they're there for you to watch whenever you want, you know. So that was Did You See That? And then, of course, my mate Muckman-Movies, he did an exciting live unboxing from Down Under. Now, this is really interesting when you watch that. Think about it. It's like, oh, not another unboxing, blah, 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 blah. if you've ever bought anything from Australia, if you know how bloody expensive it is, you never get to see things like this in many people's collections because people are put off by how much the postage is going to come across. But because of the diversity of his movie collection, opening a box from Australia with these diverse movies in them is great. I wouldn't have seen half of these boxes that he's talking about, you know, because I bought something from Australia. I think it was from the imprint label. And it was released literally 6 months later over in this country at half the price. I bought The Martian Chronicles. Had a lenticular cover. It was gorgeous. Trouble was, it came without a lenticular cover over here, and it was less than half the price. It was like 25 quid. So, you know, it put me off spending 60, 70, 80 quid on a boutique label that's over in Australia. It's just simple mathematics to me, and the fact that I just couldn't afford that. So yeah, Muckman-Movies opened up a ton of bloody films. They were all ones after ones. Well, actually, 3/4 of the ones he brought out I'd never heard of. Know what the hell he was talking about. So I learned an awful lot as well. And then just a fun one at the end, Jim Jam Movies, who I've met myself in Birmingham this year and last year. He went on holiday and did a little montage of him enjoying himself abroad. Not abroad, near Newquay, I think he went. And it was great, you know, just seeing him going into the charity shops like he does when he's here, but then also going along the beach and seeing all the sights of the high street where he was having his holiday. Absolutely wonderful. It's great to know that people are out there and they're enjoying themselves. So normally I'd pause and have a biscuit, being cheeky and having a bit without pausing. Pause too much at the moment. So thanks very much for bearing with me, but I'm absolutely starving. So we move to the last page, which is Game and Tech YouTube. And these are people that I've known for years. And their channels are second to none. And we start off with Down the Rabbit Hole, my friend in Canada. And he does a varied channel. He's almost like an actor. He's got some characters like OB Windows and all this sort of stuff. Very varied guy. And he did a review of a game called Cloudpunk. And now he didn't say whether he got it free with the PlayStation Plus thing, but he said it was like Minecraft and Blade Runner combined, and that got my interest. So he was flying around this Tokyo type city thing in this car, made out of voxels. Now I urge you to look up that word voxels. It will tell you a little bit about it. But voxels, I sort of heard about them after sort of like fractals, you know, like when I heard about Rescue on Fractalus. The next thing I heard that was being built up, apart from wireframe with textured graphics, was voxels, which was little bricks, little pixels, all built up together to give volume to 3D. And it was really good, this voxels. It's you know, that when you build them all up, they look absolutely fantastic. You get some great city designs. So that was interesting. And then he's bought himself, previously in the other weeks, a Genesis controller called, I think, the ASCII 2-Wear Power Clutch. That's what the controller's called. Anyway, he bought this homebrew cartridge called Oh Mummy, which I think is an old Spectrum game that's been converted to run on Genesis and Atari and a number of other things. It comes on a cartridge, and he wanted to test out his game on it, and it works really well because it's a bit like Amadar. If I have to try and explain Amadar, it's where you control a paint roller going around squares. if you can imagine, Oh Mummy is sort of a similar thing, only you're going around the squares inside a pyramid, and you find the key in one of the hidden blocks that you have to draw around, and then you can leave the screen, and you just keep going further and further and further into the sort of like pyramid. So yeah, that was great. And I'm sure he's got probably another video out while I'm doing this. That's the sort of guy he is. As soon as I turn around and say, yeah, he's done 2 this week, bastard does a 3rd one. Little shit. Always throws me. Then we get to my royalty that I've already talked about before. You know, the Queen of Canada. I mean, the Prince of Canada. He won't like me keep calling him a queen. Robert's Retro Gaming. As I've said before, his channel is just immense. It's got extended long play type videos of more modern games, but then he also does his games that I used to play in the past. I won't call them vintage or anything like that. But so this week he did Minecraft Play episode 155. See what I mean? How many? No Man's Sky episode 53. Whoa, slip in there. Only 53? What's up with you, man? Should be about 80, shouldn't it? And then he did a Spectrum game called Jungle Trouble. And the only problem I've got with Jungle Trouble is that they always show the Spectrum one off. Never show the 64 one off. The Spectrum one is the better of the two, and I can understand it. It's just that it's always there. I've always seen it. In fact, it was one of those games that somebody asked me to play, and my friends wanted me to play games, so I know how fun it is. But it's just that sometimes I'd like to see the one that's even worse. Do you know what I mean? And I haven't seen the 64 one for a long time. But anyway, watch that, Jungle Trouble on the Spectrum. And then, of course, on a ton of Atari 8-bits. He did Nuclear Nick, Mr. Robot, Rebound, Leaper, and Submission. I mean, that's a lot of Atari games. And I think he's done one more because I saw one this morning. Yeah, I'll fit it in and I'll write it down. It was Strip Poker by Artworks, which is an 80s strip poker game, and no more titillating than watching a really bad picture being printed on a dot matrix printer. So nothing to worry yourself in regards to nudity and all that sort of stuff. If you get excited by that, my God, God help you if you ever see the real world. I mean, that'll be a shocker for you, especially, or if you go VR. Bloody hell. Woo! Your face. Anyway, we then get to Steve's gaming, that bastard. I mean, that lovely guy. He's doing a live stream while I'm doing my blog. Git. How am I supposed to watch that then? I've got to watch it now on playback, haven't I? I mean, taking myself away from my mum and all that. How inconsiderate, little shit. Anyway, no. All this week he's been practicing and playing on trying to do streams. God bless him. I do miss the videos. Don't get me wrong. But, of course, he will be doing streams that are convenient, for the world. And, unfortunately, I, therefore, will probably have to watch them on rerun. It's just the nature of how things are with my mum. It's what you lose when you are a carer, but what you appreciate even more is knowing that your mum is around, and you'd never have it any other way. Which is why I haven't got a problem with anything, in regards to people broadcasting and what they are. My mum's the most important thing in my life right now. That's all I've got to say on the matter. If anybody wants to thumb down that aspect, that I love my mum, you go ahead and do that. You know what I mean? Just shows your true colours if you do. Moving on then, we get to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, who is such a community person. He is involved in just about every high score challenge there is out there. I mean, if he finds a high score challenge out there, he's there going, yeah, sign me up. I don't know where he gets the time from. Really don't. So he's doing Tuber's High Score Challenge, which is this week on Blood Bros, or Blood Brothers. The other one is a Mainmeister High Score Kerfuffle. That is on Flying Shark, a game that I'm much more associated with is Flying Shark, probably because it sold so incredibly well. It's another top-down shooter, vertical at that, and so therefore ultra thin. But it was one of those ones where they added scrolling to left and right so that you could see more of the battlefield. I remember when that came out, that was brilliant. Then we get to LFC Gamer and Vlogs. He did another vlog and he talked about his beloved football. He did a community question out there, which he basically posted what his predictions were for who will win the Premiership this year. And he even gave me a shout out and wished me well in regards to my football team, Coventry City. So, who, by the way, won 5-3 yesterday. So I was quite pleased by that. And last but not least is Seb's Place. Now, Seb's Place is much more of a newer channel that I've been watching. But of course, I've watched it now for 2 or 3 years, so it's hardly new. But he talked about this week, Russian ZX Spectrum, is it better than the original? Because Russia has a very convoluted look at home micros because of the don't look at the Western scene, look at the Eastern scene and all of this sort of stuff. Which means the Spectrum was not a standard Spectrum. They sort of reverse engineered it and built it from the up for their own environment. So that was a very interesting video, definitely worth your time. And I'm just going to take another little pause so I can have a bit more of this biscuit, and then I'm going to show you what I bought this week, which isn't an awful lot, to be quite honest. So just bear with me. So at this stage is usually what has arrived this week, and there hasn't been an awful lot. To be quite honest, it's going to be very, very short. But might as well go to overhead cam so that I can sort of like show you. So this has turned up from America. No idea why there isn't a British release of it, but this is a steel book, and it's a time where I think comedies were still actually coming out and they were actually okayish funny. This one is the steel book of the 20th anniversary of the 40-year-old version, and I thought the cover looked very interesting. Looked very much like Boogie Nights type cover, if you see what I mean, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All the characters are there, absolutely brilliant. There's the back of it, 2 hours of bonus features. It's a 4K release of it. It's got the R restriction there, being 4K. It will be playable over here. There's very few 4Ks that don't play in a UK player. So there's that one. And there's a bit of a story behind this one, but I'm going to show you what it is first. This is the French, the Musketeers, the Three Musketeers, hence the 3 and the sword. And you can see that it's in French in the corner. What happened with this was that I pulled the trigger on it. And what happened was, because it's from Amazon France, they delivered it without following any British instructions. And it came through, no word of a lie. Let me go to the camera. It came through on an email to me on the Tuesday saying it was delivered on the Monday. And it said on it, handed to resident. Well, that's impossible. Couldn't have been handed to a resident. I know that my sister, I and my mum in the afternoon went to the hospital with my mum. We were all having a bad time last week when it comes to health. I collapsed as well on Sunday last week. And yeah, we're having a really disastrous time. So if you ever saw me sort of like losing a bit of consciousness, that was I collapsed later on that afternoon. So I was having a really bad time. Anyway, so handed to resident. So I had to actually call Amazon, but the Amazon UK line couldn't help me because it was from Amazon France. So I had to phone Amazon France, and I spoke to a nice guy that actually spoke English, and I explained to him what the problem was. And he was very, very good about it. He turned around and he said, well, it says here handed by resident. But he did say, but I have noticed that there's no evidence here. There's no photograph handing it to you. So, sir, I do apologise for it. I'll give you an instant refund. I can't send you another one. There's no more to send. But if it does turn up between now and another time, which I told him, well, that's doubtful. It says handed to resident, doesn't it, on it? And he agreed. He said, you can keep it. It's not a problem. We don't want it back. Of course, on Wednesday, it turned up, didn't it? What could I do, really? So I was very happy. Don't get me wrong. But, yeah. This has got the Three Musketeers, both films. It's the Three Musketeers called D'Artagnan and Milady. Steelbook, 4Ks and Blu-rays. And then lots of padded extras, you know, pictures, an envelope with a letter from the Three Musketeers in it. All that sort of stuff. All sort of like looking authentic, you know, a period of the time. And I remember I saw Milady, which is the second one, actually at the pictures over here, at a British picture house, and loved it. But then again, I like Eva Green. Eva Green, you should know by now, I should think, as an actress. She's been in, let me think, she was in a James Bond film. Was she in Casino Royale, I think? Yes. Penny Dreadful, a TV series. Trying to think now. The 300 films. You know the films called the 300, Spartan 300s? She was in one of those. Oh, lots. She's been in, what's that noir film? Which is made in black and white, but it's got bits of colour in it. Oh, and it's got Mickey Rourke in it. That's going to really annoy me now. So, even though I shouldn't cheat, I'm going to. It is... yeah, Sin City. Of course it is. Sin City. What the bloody hell am I going on about? Absolutely fantastic film, Sin City. So she was in that. Very attractive looking lady, but a fantastic actress as well. So those were the pickups. And that sort of like comes to the end of the blog. And a little bit shorter this week, but it's because I had to concentrate a little bit on what's happened to me, and I haven't watched too much. But I hope you've enjoyed the blog anyway. I'm glad I managed to get some shorts out, some film shorts, and me playing some games. Hopefully that makes up for the shorter blog this week. This does not stop me doing trailers at the end of my blogs. It's just at the moment, I'm just trying to keep up with doing blogs, to be quite honest. So, but that will return. I just need to get some normality in my life. Please wish me well with me trying to get my driving license sorted out. As you can tell, I mean, I've got no problem at the moment, really, with just about anything. I'm just tired, you know, and that's it. And there must be millions of people that are in that same situation. So with that, I'm going to say salute. Till the next one. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for all your support. I pass on all my messages to my mum, if you wish her well. There's some great YouTube content by some great people that are out there. Please go and support those as well. They'll all love a like from you. They'll all love a comment from you. Just like we all do. Because we all want to feel wanted. And with that, salute. Till the next time. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.